Hello class, this video will talk about my expectations, and this video will also include the video you need to watch to answer the questions. And the questions that you'll need to answer after you watch the video are down here. Ms. Gray discusses how she determines barriers to meet the learning goals of her students. What are the types of barriers that she often finds, and how does she eliminate those? Provide 2 examples. Miss Gray incorporates different stations to address some of the challenges that all 6th graders might encounter in a language arts curriculum. What types of stations would you want to incorporate in an inclusive middle school classroom, and why? Illustrate with at least one example. So there's a brief overview of the questions that you will answer after you watch this video. And this video, Miss Gray, she really models best practice, universal design for learning approach, which is chapter 2. And I believe she models a really positive, inclusive atmosphere. And it's saying that many of her students are on IEPs, but you wouldn't be able to tell. Well, let's see what you think. And after you watch the video, answer these questions. I will stop the video and it'll just stop when it's done. So just know that after this video is done, all you need to do is answer one question, provide 2 examples, and then answer another question and provide one example. And that's how I will grade you. Okay, now I'll play the video and let me know if you have any questions.
Allison and Alexis were discussing how they looked at the picture first, got an idea, but then they went returned to the text and found a word that actually helped them better. My school is in an urban setting. It has probably 70% of the students are free or reduced lunch. More than half of the students have English as a second language. In my particular inclusion class, there are 30 students, split fairly evenly between boys and girls. Of those 30 students, 12 of them have individual educational plans. My approach to making sure that all my students' needs are met is to take a universal design for learning mindset into my classroom. So, a big part of universal design for learning is being really clear about what your learning goals are, what your learning objectives are. And then anything that's going to obstruct or prevent a student from meeting that goal is considered a barrier. And so what I do is look for the barriers that exist, not within my students, but within the materials that I'm going to present to them, and anything that would trip them up or prevent them from reaching the overall goal. I try to remove that in certain ways, building in a lot of variability or a lot of options for how students can express their knowledge is really important. So at the beginning of today's lesson, I first started by talking to the students about what their objective is and refer to it posted on the board. If you would take a second to look at, you guys are the second objective down. By the end of today's class, you are going to be able to determine an author's point of view and how they convey that or how they show that throughout a text. And then I tried to bring the students in by presenting them with a question, which was, do you think that kids your age should be allowed to stay home alone after school? And I knew that regardless of their English level, their knowledge, their content knowledge, they're very opinionated. Sixth grade students have lots of opinions, and so I knew this was a question that gave everybody an access point into the lesson. I want you to turn for a second and just chat with the person who's next to you. If you're in a group of 3, you guys can have a conversation. Do you think you're old enough to be left home alone after school for a period of time? I feel like this is a question you will have strong reactions to. So turn. First, they sort of turned and talked to their partner. Think you are old enough. Yes. Why do you think this? Yes.
You get old, you get mature, you're not like a little baby anymore.
I think yes because like you're like immature and like it's you know what's wrong. And then once they started sharing out their opinions, I asked them to provide evidence and explain their evidence. Can I have a couple of people who want to share what you and your elbow partner talked about? Do you think you're old enough to be left alone after school for a period of time? What do you think, Joey?
I say yes because if you have a phone, and like if anything goes wrong, you can call your parents. And if you get left alone, you know how to work everything at your house. You know where everything is in case of an emergency.
After the introduction of the lesson, the students split up. My co-teacher takes one half of the class, and I work with the other half of the class. So in my group, we started by reading an article to try to determine an author's point of view. And because of the challenges presented for some of these students, where so many of them receive reading instruction, and this can be a potential weakness, I chose to read the text aloud to them. Takes up the note left by her parent and decides whether she should start her homework or watch Love Connection. She is a latchkey child. It's important for me, from my perspective, to read the text aloud to them because oftentimes students can comprehend what they hear much better than what they read on their own, or their listening comprehension is higher. Also, we don't have a lot of time to practice with fluency, so it's very important for students to hear a fluent model reader. So that was another reason why we read it, and they also just enjoy it. Sort of, it takes something off of their plate when I get to read it for them. As I was reading the text aloud to the students, they were focusing on underlining evidence that they could use to support their answer to the question. So once students had underlined some evidence in the text, then they had something to bring to their partner. So I asked them to turn and talk to their elbow partner about one piece of evidence.
I agree with you because you listen to the personal stories. Let's talk about how her life is. What she's a life is.
I try to circulate around and listen to what the students are saying so that I can sort of say, hey, that's a great answer. You know, why don't you be prepared to help us out and share that when we come back together as a whole group? And that's where I get a chance to maybe focus on the kids who wouldn't generally think of themselves as strong students, but if I can find them in that one moment of glory and asking them to, you know, be prepared, and then they feel really knowledgeable. Who's the source of this quote? Who said this, Jenna?
He's an older kid that he thinks that it's not fair that their brothers and sisters are just doing nothing while he's cleaning the house.
So all sixth graders, no matter their ability, need help with their executive functioning abilities. And so this graphic organizer, we're making really clear to them what exists in the text will just help them to be able to visualize and see this more than if we were just discussing it. So I want to talk about how you fill it out in your chart. So verbally, you're telling me, you're explaining things to me, but now we want to see how we write it down on the chart. So if you look at the directions there, you don't have to waste your energy writing the entire book. That's kind of silly, right? What the important part is, you want to write the paragraph number, because remember we talked about at the beginning, I mentioned that you were having a debate at the end of the week. This is going to be 4 days old by the time we're having a debate. So you're not going to remember exactly where you found things. So we need to write the paragraph number down. So if you want to use one of these things as a piece of evidence, you know where to get them. In the second station that my students went to today, my co-teacher presented the same graphic organizer that we would be using with both the text and the video that they would be viewing. And we purposely gave the same graphic organizer so that they would have some familiarity when they went from station to station. So in the second station, they were viewing a very short clip, also about latchkey kids, where they were trying to determine the author's point of view. The reason we had them watch it on the iPads with the headphones is, although it's a very short clip, or because it's a very short clip, they were able to watch it and rewatch it as many times as they needed to catch what the people in the video were saying. And it also provided them some reference when they were talking with their partner, that they could go back and refer to the video and find the exact spot. Well, what makes it suggestive?
That parents might not give them attention because they're always at work, and then they're not going to talk to them.
So once the students had watched the clip, my co-teacher presented them with some transcriptions or some quotes from the video that she read to the students, and then they had to try to talk with their partner and as a whole group to determine where they fall on the grid. All of the activities that the students completed in both stations were intended to help students answer the question of what is the author's point of view in regards to latchkey kids. I think the lesson went really well. I had a chance to see what the students were pulling from the article, and they were not only pulling good pieces of evidence, but they also did really well at categorizing them, and they did really well. expressing that to me.